All right, another book review and another new background. But this one is for A Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. And this is the first in the Bound and the Broken trilogy, right? And I went into this with high praise from folks such as Patrick Leo, Mike's Book Reviews, um, Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews, a whole host of booktubers, right? Big ones. Fantasy book reviewers, obviously, right? And it sounds right up my alley, right? Because they're always talking about it in the context of it being like The Faithful and the Fallen, in that it is, a fantasy written like a modern adult fantasy written with the tropes of high fantasy from the past, but done really well. And I have already read The Faithful and the Fallen because of those recommendations, and I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed it, and how great the fight scenes were, and how interesting the characters were, and the dynamics between them. And I saw the tropes there, and they were done really well, and it was refreshing and nice. I really like that. But the fighting really brought it through, the combat. This one I did like. I did like it, right? The Bound and the Broken. It's hard because they sound the same, right? The Faithful and the Fallen and Bound and the Broken. Anyways, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I did not like it for 20 to 25% of the book, which was in the beginning, because it was very uninteresting. Very uninteresting because it was the farm boy who was the son of a blacksmith, who was 18 years old, who has, a couple buddies, each of them being good at something that kind of fills out the fantasy team, really. So I was there just supremely bored for 20 to 25%. And they got to a part where it was like, all right, we have to like go to the passing, which is like from boy to man test for the villages in this world, right? And you got to go to this forest and survive for a couple days and bring back the biggest kill, the biggest predator kill, to see who can win, get a purse, whatever. I hope that's not too loud. I'm in a hotel and they're getting closer with the vacuum. That's great. Anywho, I said to myself, all right, if nothing happens in this passing, if it is, or if what happens is just an interesting and I just lose it, I'm done with this, right? And luckily something happened in the passing, some interesting stuff. And from there, honestly, from there, the 25% mark all the way to the like 80% mark, it was fast, it was good. I was in the fantasy setting and I was enjoying it, right? We were introduced to new things quickly. There was fights, there was new stuff introduced like magic and things. And I was interested. I was very interested. And it got me going. And I was feeling, okay, this is an adult Aragon. Like this is because Aragon is obviously feels more YA and it's written by like a kid at that point. So it was obviously flawed, but it was still a fun read at the time. This one felt like it was an updated Aragon in really good ways, even all the way to the end when we're in this kind of a dwarf human combined settlement, even though it works a little bit different in the book. And then there was an attack there from below. It really felt like Aragon. Yeah, it really felt like the new version of Aragon, written by an adult for adults. And I liked it, but that last I would say the last 15% of the book until we got to the conclusion, right? The very end 5% was it like slowed down again, and I was bored because it was like, hey, let's introduce this new city at the end, and then let's introduce this other dwarf city and do all of this stuff. And I didn't get any wonder from it. It was just boring, right? And I was seriously thinking, okay, I guess we're going to end with nothing happening, or we're going to end and we decide, the enemy get to the gates, and now that's the end of the book. But that didn't happen, thankfully. More like things happened, right? But at the end of the day, like I would say 30% of the book, I was sort of bored. The first 25%, the last 5%, right? Well, a bit of the last 5%. And then also, I don't remember the characters very well, like at all. Obviously, you have your main guy, and he was, an 18-year-old. He made some stupid decisions, got hot headed, was rash, but you know, I didn't I didn't care for him too much. He was a main character, fantasy character, right? And I was whatever. I'm good. I'm good. Things happened to him, which spurned on his aggression and anger and all that kind of stuff. I get it, right? I was just uninterested in him because I've read a million characters like him. He was kind of a cut and paste dude. His friends were also cut and paste. One was a ranger, one was a mage, right? The action was okay. It was passable, it was serviceable, nothing memorable. It wasn't like John Gwynn's, who himself took from or comes from the Bernard Cornwell like school of action, let's say. So it's not like that. It's typical fantasy action that you would get. It's good, right? I enjoyed it. It flows well. It's good. I have no complaint with it other than it's not John Gwynn level. Yeah, none of the characters I was incredibly interested in. The magic system felt again just like an Aragon magic system, where you use it, you get tired. That's the thing. Um, the description of it, cool. I like as you describe it, the spark. I read it, but I would skip a little bit of the description as we go on. Nothing was. It felt like a stock standard fantasy. I don't know what to say about it. Like it felt like a fantasy world. The Empire's in control. There's dragon riders. We have a dragon thing. I'm not a huge fan of dragons. Really, I read Dragonlance as a young teenager, so really young teenager. I read a whole bunch of books, like a dozen, 2 dozen, probably closer to 2 dozen of the Dragonlance books back then when I was like 11, 12, 13, something like that. And that was really my dragon phase, right? um but nowadays I don't really care about dragons very much. It's cool. I treated him like an animal companion, like you would a wolf in the Faithful and the Fallen. There we go. And I think it was done better in the Faithful and the Fallen as well. So, you know, I'm sure it'll get, and the dragon wasn't there for most of it, right? So obviously it's not as prevalent, so it's kind of an unfair example. So maybe in the second book there's more of it, but I'm also not compelled to continue, which is another thing. So I was compelled. It was like I was being pushed forward by intrigue and the action. I really wanted to read more of the action, and the characters were fun, right? In The Faithful and the Fallen, I am not getting that. However, I would say more devastating things happen in this book, like for the characters, especially like our main character. I felt more devastation, and I actually felt something for the main character's sister, Ella. Awful things, and she's got more stuff coming to her. Our main character, that loss really has affected him. I felt like the loss of his, spoilers, the loss of his parents, and in such a brutal way. Like that was really rough and a rough thing to see and to be the cause of. Really, really messed with the character. I felt like it was very visceral. While what happened to Corbin, I think in Faithful and the Fallen, I think that's his name from memory. Uh, he did lose his, again, spoilers for that. He did lose his father in the end, and that affected him a lot. But it felt like he had his friend group and the people around him supported him. I mean, like you really felt that support. In this one, I don't know. I'm just not into the characters. The characters don't feel like Wrist gets taken away. Dan, he's more of a wisecracker, and yeah, he does support the main character a lot, and you get that. But he's like the only one. Everyone else is kind of there, and you get that in the internet. It's explicitly said like they're kind of there, and they're only caring about this dude because he's this dragon rider dude, and they're not really his friends, right? There is no, I don't feel that connection being made as I did in Faithful and Fallen, where there is, like, you feel the connections being made and fellowships being had here. Like in this, it's like, all right, these guys are here just to train him because he's a dragon rider. There's no real friendship here. You don't feel it. Then he gets like a coterie of elves towards the end in this book, and they're there because they swore an oath to the Dragon Rider. He is being used as a pawn by people at the end to further their desires. And yes, they're played off and they're explained as being, they're good guys. They're not like evil or anything, but like there is no companionship here. The only real companions are the childhood friends, and one is taken and the other is there, but that's kind of it. So I don't feel that the wholesomeness that A Faithful and the Fallen has, where I feel like it's a wholesome adult fantasy, but at the core there's a good fellowship, and the fellowship is building, and it's made from all these people from disparate places and disparate backgrounds, and coming together and being super friendly and nice and companionable and supporting each other through thick and the thin. This one, it just doesn't feel like that. Maybe it happens more in the future, maybe that builds, but in this one it just didn't feel like that at all. So yeah, I would say as a book I'd give it a 7. Yeah, I'd give it a 7 for sure. That 30% boredom really hurts it. Like honestly, I might be thinking about it in the future and bring it lower, but for now, having just finished, I'd give it a 7. Yeah, and that's me being nice. That's me being good about it. It was again completely serviceable. Everything, like how it was written, was well. The humor didn't work for me, but that's humor. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't really take away from it because of that. The action was everything was serviceable and done well. It's just that the tropes I've seen before, and it just felt like an updated Aragon, written today and by an adult. Yeah, this feels like I would have eaten this up had I just turned like had I been like 16, 17. I've graduated from the Dragonlance days. I am now on to being able to read, adult fiction and like it for what it is, and this would be it, right? It would be Faithful and Fallen, and then this, right, would be perfect, and I would enjoy it more. It's just that Faithful and the Fallen just does things. The story is more interesting to me because you have many point of views from multiple sides, right? From multiple sides of the conflict. In this one, you have mostly the main dude, and then every now and again, it's sprinkled with different point of views, but you don't really get it like you do in Faithful and the Fallen. So I have been spending this whole time comparing Faithful and Fallen to The Bound and the Broken, and I've said Faithful and the Fallen even more than the book that in the series this review is on, and that's because as I was reading this, I would have much rather been reading Faithful and the Fallen. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, but if you like Dragon Rider fantasy, this is solid. It'll get you there. If you like the trope farm boy to Dragon Rider emperor kind of level, like top level, you're gonna get that most likely with this, with the promises that this sets up. And you get towards the end of this, I just wasn't very supremely satisfied with it. Might not be my vibe, not be my thing right now, but go for it. 7 out of 10. Moving on to the next book. We'll see what that is. It'll probably be one of those filler kind of series that I'm reading. Right now I'm in a hotel in Japan as I leave. The place that you've mostly seen since now has been my old house, and there might be more stuff after this, but probably not, maybe not, who knows, where it has my house in Japan, but that's all gone now. Moved out, and I'm in a hotel for a few days until I get to the States. So yep, we'll have lots of backgrounds for a while until I get settled to wherever that's going to be. But yeah, that's the review. Who knows what's next? All right, on to the next one.